The iPhone screen was still intact after 5 years wedged between granite slabs, but the last photo taken showed only the first day of what should have been a 3-day climb. Kai Nakamura's weathered backpack hung suspended 40 feet down, a technical ravine in Yosemite's backcountry, held in place by 2 massive rock formations that had shifted just enough to trap it perfectly. The 29-year-old software engineer from San Francisco had vanished without a trace in October 2018, leaving behind only his signature in a trail logbook and a mystery that would haunt search teams for half a decade. Inside that recovered backpack, investigators found 3 energy bars still sealed in their wrappers, a half-empty water bottle, and climbing gear that had never been used. Kai Nakamura wasn't just another weekend warrior who got in over his head. He had spent 4 years methodically conquering some of California's most challenging granite walls, documenting every route with obsessive precision in hand-drawn journals that filled 3 notebooks. His apartment in the Mission District contained detailed topographical maps marked with colored pins showing every climb he'd completed, every route he'd scouted, and every technical challenge he'd overcome. But the red pin marking his final destination sat alone on a section of map that most climbers avoided entirely. The question that consumed search and rescue teams wasn't whether Kai had the skills to handle the terrain. The question was why. Someone who planned every detail of his climbs down to the exact amount of water needed per day would disappear so completely that helicopters equipped with thermal imaging couldn't find a single trace of him across 200 square miles of wilderness. Kai had chosen the Phantom Spire route on purpose. The granite monolith rises 2,800 feet from the valley floor through a maze of loose rock and hidden crevasses that claim lives every year. Only 12 climbers had successfully completed the full route since it was first mapped in 1987, and 3 of those 12 required helicopter rescue on their descent. The route demanded technical skills that took most climbers a decade to develop, but it also demanded something else that couldn't be learned from books or practice walls. October 15th, 2018 was the last day anyone saw Kai alive. He arrived at the Phantom Spire trailhead at 5:47 a.m., carrying a 40-pound pack loaded with enough supplies for 3 days of solo climbing. The park ranger who checked his permit later told investigators that Kai seemed unusually quiet that morning, barely making eye contact when asked about his planned route. He signed the logbook with his characteristic precise handwriting, listing his expected return date as October 18th, and his emergency contact as his sister Yuki in Portland. The weather forecast called for clear skies and temperatures in the mid-60s. Perfect climbing conditions. Kai had waited 6 months for this exact weather window, studying meteorological patterns and historical data to pick the optimal 3-day period for his attempt. He'd even taken vacation days from his job at a tech startup to ensure he wouldn't feel rushed. Everything about the trip followed his normal pattern of meticulous preparation, except for one detail that nobody noticed until much later. Kai's climbing journal contained detailed plans for 47 different routes in Yosemite. Each one mapped out with approach times, gear requirements, and bailout options. But the page designated for Phantom Spire was completely blank, except for a single sentence written in red ink. Some things can't be planned. The handwriting analysis confirmed it was Kai's, but the red pen wasn't found among his recovered gear, and nobody could explain why he would deviate from his usual comprehensive planning style. The first sign something was wrong came on October 19th, when Kai failed to check out with the rangers. His sister Yuki called the park service after he missed their scheduled evening phone call, something he had never done in 4 years of regular climbing trips. Search teams were deployed at first light on October 20th, starting with the most logical assumption that Kai had suffered an injury somewhere along the standard Phantom Spire approach route. But the search teams found nothing. No gear scattered from a fall, no rope left behind at an anchor point, no footprints in the soft earth near water sources where an injured climber might have tried to rest. The helicopter crews reported that the granite faces showed no signs of recent rockfall or avalanche activity that could have buried evidence. After 8 days of intensive searching involving 47 personnel and 2 helicopters, the official report concluded that Kai Nakamura had simply vanished. The search operation cost the National Park Service $18,000 and covered every accessible section of the Phantom Spire area. Thermal imaging detected deer, black bears, and several other hikers, but no trace of Kai's body heat signature. Ground teams rappelled into crevasses deep enough to hide a school bus. Technical rescue specialists checked every ledge and cave system within a 5-mile radius of the route. They found old climbing gear from other expeditions, weathered bones from animals that had died decades earlier, and trash left behind by careless visitors, but nothing that belonged to Kai. The mystery deepened when investigators discovered that Kai's cell phone had stopped transmitting GPS data at 11:23 a.m. on October 15th, approximately 4 hours after he started hiking. The final ping came from a location that made no geographical sense based on the standard approach to Phantom Spire, a According to his GPS coordinates, Kai had somehow moved 1.8 miles southeast of where he should have been, in an area of technical terrain that would require advanced rope work to access safely. Cell phone records showed that Kai had made no calls and sent no text messages on October 15th. His phone contained no photos taken after 9:15 a.m. when he had snapped a picture of the sunrise from the trailhead parking area. The phone's battery was at 87% when it stopped transmitting, ruling out power failure as an explanation for the lost signal. Phone company technicians confirmed that the device had not been damaged or submerged in water before losing contact with cell towers. Kai's family hired a private investigator who spent 3 months reviewing the case files and conducting additional interviews. The investigator uncovered one detail that park rangers had missed. A maintenance worker had seen someone matching Kai's description near the Phantom Spire area at approximately 2:30 p.m. on October 15th, more than 3 hours after. His phone went silent. The sighting placed Kai much deeper into the wilderness than his GPS data suggested, and moving in a direction that didn't correspond to any known climbing route. The maintenance worker, a 23-year veteran of Yosemite's trail crew named Douglas Reeves, told the private investigator that he had waved at the climber from across a ravine but received no response. The person appeared to be moving slowly and deliberately through an area that Reeves described as technical enough to kill you if you don't know what you're doing. When shown photos of Kai, Reeves expressed 85% confidence in his identification, noting that the climber's distinctive red helmet and blue pack matched the description from missing person reports. Winter snows shut down the search area for 5 months, and by spring 2019, the official investigation had been suspended. Kai's family held a memorial service in San Francisco, attended by 200 people, including climbing partners, who described him as one of the most safety-conscious climbers they knew. His sister Yuki established a scholarship fund for aspiring climbers, and his employer donated his final paycheck to mountain rescue organizations. But questions about his disappearance continued to haunt everyone who knew him. The breakthrough came on September 12, 2023, when a group of 4 experienced climbers were attempting a new route on the backside of Phantom Spire. The team was descending through a technical ravine system that required multiple rappels when Alex Chen, a 34-year-old climbing guide from Berkeley, spotted something unusual wedged between 2 granite slabs about 40 feet below their position. The object appeared to be fabric, faded by years of weather exposure but clearly artificial. Chen rappelled down to investigate and immediately recognized the object as a backpack. The pack was firmly trapped between rock formations that had apparently shifted over time, creating a perfect pocket that prevented it from falling further into the ravine. The fabric was bleached and torn in several places, but the main compartment remained intact and showed signs of having been protected from the worst weather by its position between the rocks. Inside the backpack, Chen found items that had been preserved by the dry climate and protection from direct sunlight. A water bottle still contained liquid, though it had developed a green tint from algae growth. 3 energy bars remained sealed in their original packaging. A small first aid kit showed no signs of use. Most importantly, Chen discovered an iPhone, wrapped in a plastic bag that had kept it completely dry for 5 years. The phone belonged to Kai Nakamura. When powered on using a portable battery pack, the device still functioned normally and contained all of Kai's data from October 2018. The final photo in his camera roll showed the sunrise from the Phantom Spire trailhead, taken at 9:15 a.m. on Imda, the day he disappeared. His messaging apps showed no activity after he left the parking area, and his browser history revealed nothing unusual beyond normal pre-climb research. But the phone's location data told a different story than investigators had originally believed. The GPS log showed that Kai had indeed moved 1.8 miles southeast of the standard Phantom Spire route, traveling through terrain that would have required technical climbing skills and significant route-finding experience. The data indicated he had spent several hours in an area that experienced climbers describe as a maze of false summits and dead-end ravines. The final GPS coordinate recorded by Kai's phone placed him within 300 yards of where his backpack was eventually found. The timestamp showed 11:23 a.m., meaning he had been in that specific area for less than 6 hours before something went wrong. The precision of the location data suggested that Kai had been stationary for several minutes when his phone stopped transmitting, possibly while taking a break or studying his route options. Chen and his climbing team immediately contacted Park Rangers, who launched a new search operation focused on the area where the backpack was recovered. The search team included many of the same personnel who had participated in the original 2018 operation, and they brought updated equipment, including drone technology that hadn't been available 5 years earlier. The operation lasted 4 days and covered a much smaller area with significantly more detail than the previous search. The drone footage revealed terrain features that ground teams had missed in 2018. The ravine system where Kai's backpack was found connected to a network of narrow canyons that extended much deeper into the granite formation than topographical maps indicated. Some of these canyons were barely wide enough for a person to pass through, while others opened into hidden chambers that couldn't be seen from above. The complexity of the terrain explained how someone could disappear so completely in an area that seemed thoroughly searched. Ground teams discovered additional evidence that Kai had been in the area. A section of climbing rope, faded to gray but still recognizable as dynamic climbing cord, was found wrapped around a granite boulder approximately 400 yards from the backpack location. The rope had been cut cleanly rather than frayed from wear, suggesting that Kai had deliberately abandoned it for reasons that searchers couldn't determine. Analysis of the rope's condition indicated it had been exposed to weather for approximately the same length of time as the backpack. More disturbing was the discovery of Kai's climbing helmet, found upside down in a shallow depression beneath an overhanging rock formation. The helmet showed significant impact damage on the left side, with cracks extending completely through the outer shell. The pattern of damage was consistent with a fall from significant height onto granite, but the helmet's location didn't correspond to any vertical cliff faces that could have produced such an impact. The inside of the helmet contained organic material that DNA analysis confirmed belonged to Kai Nakamura. The amount of biological evidence was consistent with what would be expected from a severe head injury, but not necessarily a fatal one. The helmet's chin strap was still buckled, indicating that Kai had been wearing it properly when whatever happened to him occurred. This evidence contradicted theories that he might have been attempting to climb without proper safety gear. The final piece of evidence found during the 2023 search was Kai's climbing journal, discovered in a waterproof container hidden beneath a pile of loose rocks near the base of the ravine system. The journal was in perfect condition, protected from weather by its sealed container and deliberately concealed location. The last entry was dated October 15, 2018, and written in Kai's characteristic, precise handwriting, but the content was unlike anything else in the journal. The entry read, "The route is different than the maps show. Everything is different. I can see the way, but I don't think I can go back. The pack is too heavy and the rope isn't long enough. If someone finds this, tell Yuki that the red pen was for marking the places where planning doesn't work. Some problems can only be solved by going forward." Below this entry, Kai had drawn a detailed map of the ravine system where his gear was eventually found. The map showed passage routes through the narrow canyon network, marked with precise measurements and technical climbing grades. Several sections of the map were marked with symbols that experienced climbers recognized as warnings for loose rock, hidden drops, and unstable terrain. The map was far more accurate than any official topographical survey of the area. At the bottom of the page, Kai had written coordinates that placed him deeper in the ravine system than any of his gear was found. The coordinates pointed to a location approximately 800 yards southeast of where his backpack was recovered, in an area that 2023 search teams were unable to access safely without specialized equipment. The terrain at those coordinates consisted of near vertical, granite walls dropping into narrow slots that hadn't been fully explored. The National Park Service declared Kai Nakamura legally dead in December 2023, but the official cause of death was listed as undetermined rather than accidental. The GIS evidence suggested that Kai had survived his initial injuries long enough to hide his journal and attempt to find an escape route through terrain that ultimately proved impassable. The location of his gear indicated a systematic attempt to lighten his load while moving through increasingly difficult terrain. Climbing experts who reviewed the evidence concluded that Kai had likely become trapped in the ravine system after suffering a head injury that impaired his judgment but didn't immediately incapacitate him. His journal entries suggested that he understood his situation was desperate, but was attempting to find a technical climbing solution that would allow him to escape without outside assistance. The deliberate placement of his gear and journal indicated that he maintained hope of survival even as his situation deteriorated. The mystery of exactly what happened to Kai Nakamura during his final hours remains unsolved. The evidence suggests that he survived for some time after his phone stopped transmitting, possibly for several days, based on the systematic way his gear was distributed through the ravine system. But the harsh reality of wilderness survival meant that even a skilled climber couldn't survive indefinitely without adequate food, water, and shelter in terrain that offered none of those resources. His body was never recovered, despite the 2023 search operation covering areas that had been inaccessible during the original investigation. The granite formations in the deepest sections of the ravine system contained crevasses and hidden chambers that could conceal evidence indefinitely. Winter weather and the natural processes of decomposition likely ensured that any remaining physical evidence would be impossible to locate after 5 years of exposure to the elements. The Kai Nakamura case changed search and rescue protocols in Yosemite National Park. GPS tracking devices are now recommended for all solo climbers attempting technical routes, and the Park Service has invested in drone technology specifically. designed for searching complex terrain features like ravine systems and slot canyons. The area where Kai disappeared is now marked with warning signs, advising climbers of the technical challenges and limited escape options. His sister Yuki continues to visit Yosemite annually, hiking to the area where his backpack was found. She has established a tradition of leaving energy bars at the base of Phantom Spire for other climbers, a gesture that has been adopted by dozens of other visitors who learned about Kai's story. The energy bars are always gone within days, taken by climbers who need them, or removed by park maintenance crews. But new ones appear regularly throughout the climbing season. The red pen that Kai mentioned in his final journal entry was never found among his recovered gear. Climbing partners later recalled that he'd started carrying red pens during his final year of climbing, using them to mark routes on maps and in journals, but nobody understood the significance until reading his last written words. The red markings in his other journals now serve as a reminder that even the most careful planning can't account for every variable that wilderness climbing presents. Kai Nakamura's disappearance remains one of the most thoroughly documented unsolved cases in Yosemite's history. His story serves as a sobering reminder that the wilderness doesn't distinguish between experienced climbers and novices when conditions turn deadly. The granite faces that he loved for their technical challenges and natural beauty ultimately claimed his life in a way that defied the safety protocols and rescue capabilities that protect most climbers who find themselves in trouble. The backpack wedged between granite slabs for 5 years has become an unofficial memorial to all the climbers who have disappeared in America's wilderness areas. Kai's meticulous preparation, documented experience, and careful planning couldn't save him when he needed them most. But his final journal entry, hidden deliberately for future discovery, ensured that his story would eventually be told, and his warnings about unpredictable terrain would be heard by other climbers facing similar challenges. In the end, Kai Nakamura achieved what he had spent 4 years pursuing in Yosemite's granite wilderness. He found a route that no other climber had successfully completed. The price of that discovery was everything he had, paid in a ravine system where planning couldn't. Overcome the fundamental unpredictability of stone, weather, and human endurance, tested beyond their limits.